I know you won't agree with me on this.
It's not about whether I agree. It's about whether the facts agree with you.
I don't think that's the case.
Hold on. Let me just give you some facts.
Two speakers sat down with an opponent who had an answer for everything. One of them says what the panels usually avoid. Mass immigration changed the country, and nobody voted for it. Watch a warm story about assimilation run straight into British polling. Watch the trains and the NHS get blamed for everything. Then watch one line about facts stop the conversation dead. This room was never going to hand them anything. Let's get into it.
The main reason is they feel like they've been let down by mass immigration that's eroding the values of their country. And of course, this is where I think people on the right are very blind to this issue that we already raised, which is wealth inequality and opportunity. Right?
I'm sure there are some people who feel that way, of course, but...
well, think about this, Hasan.
But
right? Hold on, let me just finish the point. Like, stereotypically speaking, is it left of center people or right of center people that are going to go and fight for their country? Typically, it's going to be right of center people because of the mindset that they have.
30 seconds in, and the frame is already set. People feel let down by mass immigration, and the reply is a hedge. Some people feel that way, of course, but then comes the question that actually lands. Who volunteers to fight for their country? Left of center or right of center? That is not a talking point. That is a test of who still feels ownership of the place. Watch the answer turn into a technicality about conscription.
Right.
I think when push comes to shove, everybody fights for their country because that's why you have to have a draft.
In a war. But what we're talking about in this situation is, will you go and serve in the armed forces? That is going to be a more right-leaning perspective. And those people, we probably, fair to say, know the UK pretty well. Those people are concerned about the national identity of their country. It's like, why would I fight for a country that doesn't feel like my country?
There it is. Push comes to shove, everybody fights, because that is what a draft is for. That answers a question nobody asked. Our speaker was talking about volunteers, the people who sign up before anyone makes them. And he lands the line the whole debate orbits. Why would I fight for a country that does not feel like my country? No slogan, no hate. A question about belonging that the other side keeps refusing to answer directly.
Is the issue for them.
This is where the big point of division comes for someone like myself. You're Venezuelan originally, your family came from Venezuela, your family came from the USSR. You guys are the most British people I've ever encountered.
I have a very British face, yes. You are correct.
Yeah, exactly. You're British to the bone.
Yeah.
And yet your families also came from countries that were somewhat far away from England, right? Yeah. And I'm Turkish. I grew up in Turkey. My whole family lives in Turkey still, with some exceptions. And I would say I'm pretty assimilated to American culture. I grew up being fascinated by American culture. I grew up consuming American pop culture, as do many people all around the world. And what I always find interesting is when people focus on the newcomers, to say that this is actually destroying the social fabric or social cohesion, not realizing that there are a ton of polls conducted on this stuff. I can just speak for America, especially, where by the second generation, assimilation is almost complete. And by the third one, it's like virtually impossible to distinguish in terms of performance, educational output, and job performance in general. It's just like everyone becomes American.
Notice the move. Instead of answering the identity question, he flatters the room. You are British to the bone. Your families came from Venezuela and the Soviet Union. Case closed. It is a warm story, and it proves nothing about scale. 3 assimilated men in a studio are not a national statistic. Then comes the polling. In America, 2nd generation assimilated, 3rd generation indistinguishable. America is not Britain. Watch our speaker put British numbers on the table.
That's not true in the UK, though, unfortunately. So if you look at, for example, Islamist radicalization, 2nd and 3rd generation Muslims are much more radical than 1st generation.
Yeah.
So we're not, that's the issue that a lot of people in Britain are concerned about, is not everyone's assimilating the way that the 3 of us have done.
That is the whole ball game. And it took 11 seconds. 2nd and 3rd generation radicalization runs higher in Britain, not lower. The American curve he just described points the other way here. Not everyone is assimilating the way the 3 of them did. That is not an insult to anybody. It is a description of a trend. And it is the one thing his optimism has no answer for. Listen to what gets offered instead.
Here's the interesting point about that. Well, two things I want to address. First, like I said, people assimilate. And they become a part of the
some people
normal forces of society. They become a part of the culture, or they bring some aspect of their culture into British culture. You know, they change the cuisine, and people seemingly enjoy it, even if they also simultaneously go attend an EDL rally and then, you know, get a little quick curry afterwards, or a little kebab on the side. But beyond that, the reason why people are angry is always going to be because the trains are not running on time, because the NHS is improperly managed due to underfunding. That's what I believe. I think it's always an issue of underfunding, where they're not getting the same services that they once used to, and also things are becoming more and more costly.
So the answer to radicalization statistics is food. They change the cuisine, and people enjoy it. Nobody disputes the curry. The question was about the second generation getting more radical, not less, and the reply is a joke about an EDL rally and a kebab. Then, the real thesis arrives. The trains are late, the NHS is underfunded, and that is the actual source of the anger. Hold that thought, because the ballot box is about to make it look very thin.
So in that anger, it's much easier for them to be guided by a right-wing, guided by the right-wing forces, to turn around and say, you're angry and you're right to be angry. And the reason why you're angry, or the reason why all of these things are happening, is because we are importing all of these random strangers into the country who don't speak your language, who you are scared by. And that, I think, causes division, and it causes friction that makes it harder for people to integrate. And that is part of the reason why I think, especially in a place like the UK, you see a little bit more of this resilience towards full-blown integration into society.
Listen to what that argument actually says. Millions of people did not reach their own conclusions. They were guided there by right-wing forces telling them who to blame. That is not an argument. That is a way of not having one. And notice the closing move. The friction caused by mass immigration becomes an argument for why immigration is not the problem. Now watch the Brexit question arrive, and watch this framing meet a number it cannot explain away.
I also think as well, Hasan, if we're being honest, it's also because we have had such huge amounts of immigration come into the country that people understandably go, this pace of change is too much. And you have to think, let's go back to 2016, which was the Brexit referendum. Now, Brexit was about many things, but really it was about people wanting immigration to be lowered. And that was nigh on 10 years ago. Immigration hasn't been lowered. In fact, it's been ratcheted up. So people people voted to lower immigration. And for instance, I voted Remain. People voted Brexit. I'm like, well, that's democracy. We get on. We're going to make the best of it. I do believe that when you ignore people's wishes at the ballot box, and people explicitly vote for something and you ignore them for the best part of a decade, that does generate a lot of anger, and understandably so.
This is the point the other side never wants on the table. 2016 was a vote to lower immigration. 10 years later, the numbers went up, not down. A man who voted Remain is making the case, which kills the idea that this is just tribal loyalty. You ignore a decisive vote for a decade, and you get anger. That is not extremism. That is arithmetic about democracy. Watch the reply, reach past the ballot box, and land on the economy again.
I think in that same time frame, if there was enough appetite by the government to address the financial harm that people were experiencing, the economic struggles that people were experiencing, there would still be a lot of people who say, I don't want a brown person, I don't want a black person around in my neighborhood. But ultimately, those numbers would be far smaller. And that's what I always go back to. I'm a leftist. I believe in economic improvements, and I believe that a lot of the reactionary forces actually take advantage of that instability, the economic volatility that exists, in an effort to shift the attention away to people who have the same exact interests as you and I do. Because ultimately, I don't believe that anyone is coming into the United States of America or the UK, as a matter of fact, because they want to bring about a Salafist-style Islamic caliphate in London.
There is the claim, said out loud, nobody is coming to the UK to build a Salafist caliphate in London. Confident, unsourced, offered as something you simply believe, and it walks straight into the strongest 15 seconds our speaker has. Facts do not care whether the two of you agree. Notice also what just happened to everyone who is worried about this. They were sorted into people who do not want a neighbor of a different color. Watch the numbers answer that.
I know you won't agree with me on
It's
this.
not about whether I agree, it's about whether the facts agree with you.
I don't think that's the case.
Hold on.
I think
Well,
ultimately,
let me just give you some facts then. If that, we have a terrorist attack on a monthly basis by an Islamist, effectively. We just had 2 in the space of the last month as we're recording this. 33%, I think, of British Muslims want Sharia law in Britain, like, according to polls. More than half want to ban...
I haven't seen these polls.
Well, we can put them in for people to see. More than half want to ban homosexuality, right? So when you say people aren't coming in to introduce an Islamist stuff, well, some of them want to if they're in a position to do so. We have 5 MPs who are effectively elected on a sectarian ticket, like as in, we are Muslims, vote for us because you're a Muslim.
Who would you say those MPs are?
The 5 independent MPs, they're called the Gaza MPs or whatever way you want to call them. Right?
Are you talking about like Zara Sultana?
I don't know if she's one of them. I think one of them is called Adnan Hussein. There's 5 of them. We can look them up. We can put them in for people to see. Right. So I think it should be said that the overwhelming majority of British Muslims don't want Sharia law. But if 33% of them do, you can see why a lot of people who don't want Sharia law might be concerned about that, right?
Sure. I don't know what I haven't seen these polls, and I also don't know what British Muslims, or the 33% that are saying they want Sharia law.
Watch how the debate ends. One side brought a story about assimilation, trains, funding, and the claim that the anger is manufactured. The other side brought a monthly attack count, polling on Sharia law, and 5 MPs elected on a sectarian ticket. And the response to all of it was, I have not seen those polls. That is where this conversation always lands. The optimistic model of integration is fine until someone puts British numbers next to it. Nobody on that panel hated anyone. One of them just refused to let feelings replace evidence. Do you think our speaker exposed something real about integration in Britain? Or was the economic argument the stronger case? Drop your thoughts in the comments.